Welcome to Film Independent Presents. My name is Jenn Wilson, and I'm Senior Programmer for this screening series. I want to do a couple of thank yous to sponsors first before we get started. Thanks to Film Independent Presents lead sponsor, Hollywood Foreign Press Association. The HFPA has been an ardent supporter of this program for many years, and we're so thankful for their support, especially during this trying time. Thank you also to our new partner, Vision Media. We're now taking Film Independent Presents digitally on this exciting virtual screening platform. So make sure to check out Film Independent Calendar to see what we have coming up. Just a note to anybody watching today, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen that you can use to send us any questions. We'll pick a few questions at the end of the Q&A from the audience to ask our guests. And speaking of guests, today with us we have a Q&A with filmmaker Eliza Hittman for the film Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. Also joined with Eliza are the two lead actors from the film, Sydney Flanagan and Talia Ryder. Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always premiered at the Sundance Film Festival and won the Special Jury Award for Neorealism. It also won the Silver Bear at the Berlin Film Festival in February. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pretty heavy hitter awards.
Thank you.
I realized you'd won an award at Sundance, but I didn't know that it was for neorealism. And when I thought about that, I was like, that's kind of perfect. How does it feel to be honored with a special award for neorealism for this? Is that what you feel like you were trying to achieve with this film? Is that quality?
I think the term applies. I think that the film does sort of have some playful kind of cinematic devices, that maybe you wouldn't find in a traditional neorealist film. Like I use a lot of extreme close-ups and slow motion and things that create, punctuate moments and create sort of hyper subjectivity. And I don't know if you would find those things necessarily in a neorealist film, but, I do think that the origin and, definitely, I'm definitely aspiring for a certain level of truth and beauty that I think is found in neorealism.
So I had heard that this project actually started as you were commissioned by someone to write this project. Do you want to talk about the origin story of the film?
Yeah, it's the first time actually that I've really been commissioned to write a script, and it was with the BBC. I met with the head of the BBC when I was promoting Beach Rats, my second feature at BFI, and the head of the BBC, Rose Garnett, is really an incredible woman, an incredible producer who is just really trusting and artist friendly. And she asked me in a casual way, what do you want to do next? And I said, I have this film, there's two versions of it. I've written two treatments. One is set in Ireland and one is set in the United States. But they both deal with the, untold journey that women take, to access an abortion. And it's a poetic odyssey and blah, blah, blah. And she was like, well, I think you should make the US version of that film, but I can still try and find a way to support you, at least in the development and the writing of the script. And Rose was the first partner in the project.
So how long was your writing process? When did you begin and when did you finish?
I started thinking about the project actually a long time ago in 2012. And so then I put it on hold. So I had done some research then, and then I picked it up again. I guess I want to say 8 months was the writing process, 6 months, and then a lot of revisions as we started taking the script out to financiers. But, just the writing process was probably 6 months.
So your three features have involved young people dealing with their sexuality. Was that planned that way for you to make three movies that are on a similar topic, or is that just sort of the way that it ended up?
Um, I think it's always been an interest of mine. And, when I made It Felt Like Love, which was this, micro budget film all about a young woman's quest to feel desired and to understand, sex and sex appeal and femininity. And she takes this really sort of like aggressive approach to trying to get male attention.
Right.
And it doesn't work. And then that movie was sort of delicate and feminine and dreamy. And I wanted to see if I could tackle, male sexuality next. And what does that mean as a woman to, turn, the gaze on men and thinking about, I was thinking a lot about this kind of like like almost like going into the story of one of the guys from It Felt Like Love. I thought would be interesting to do.
Yes.
And this film, I think it's a little bit different, even though it does obviously deal with, a woman's, identity, and a young woman's identity at a very vulnerable, crisis point in her life. I think my first two films deal with much more self-destructive characters, and this is sort of a more I don't know, it's like it's a story about a girl trying to reclaim her body in a way and her youth. So it's less dark and it's less self-destructive. It's less of a self-destructive journey.
Were you tackling the subject of abortion, which is still so contentious in the United States? Were you worried about this film being too political? Was there a discussion?
I was more worried about the film as being too like female issue driven and what the label and stigma of that would be like in the marketplace. Because obviously, I think there's this sort of labeling of, movies about young men as universal, but stories about young women are niche. And that's always something that's frustrated me.
Yeah.
So that was, I was worried less about the movie being politicized. I was worried about it being stigmatized as a film about, an issue. I was worried about it being niche because it's women, it deals with women. And there was one other thing I had in my mind, but I lost the thought. Those were things that I was thinking about.
It's definitely not niche. I
was worried about it being too didactic.
Oh, okay.
Those were my like three big concerns about the movie in writing it and approaching it.
If anything, it's one of the most incredibly relatable films that I've ever seen, and I was talking to one of my friends about it the other day, and we were checking off on the list the things that happened to them. Have that ever happened to us? And almost every single one was like, creepy guy at work that tries to kiss your hand or hold your hand all the time. Check. People masturbating in front of you. Check. Was that something did you draw on people's real experiences when you were doing the writing?
I did. I mean, I think that like as a writer, I'm interested in smaller moments that surround us. And in the world, I'm always observing and trying to collect those moments. And they all come from sort of different places. I'm from New York City, but my partner, who's an editor, is from a small town, like almost in Niagara Falls. And actually the moments like with the kissing of the hand in the register and some of the supermarket stuff comes from actually his experiences working in a supermarket as a teenager.
Yeah.
And just, kind of collecting moments, images and moments. And I think, my mind just kind of accumulates them. And then as I start to write, they come to me and I plug them in.
What was behind the choice of the setting and the year? So, because we hear at the very end of the movie, like what's the date and the location and what procedure, and she says 2002, and then they're in Ellensboro, I think, Pennsylvania.
She doesn't say 2000. She says her birthday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's the like informed consent, where like you go into a hospital and actually you asked your name and your date of birth over and over again. So yeah, that's not the year that the film is set.
Did you set it in Pennsylvania because you needed a place that had consent law?
I guess I felt like, when I did my research, I talked a lot to people about, where women were traveling from and why, and that was one that came up often.
Yeah.
And I felt like if I was going to make a film that was credible about like young people taking this journey together, it didn't, it felt sort of funny that it would be from farther away.
So let's talk to your actors.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about how you, because in particular with your films, when I think about your films, I think about your actors. I think your casting is great. And just talk about your casting process. How did you meet Talia and Sydney?
I guess when the process started, I casted a really wide net. And I think I'm like every casting director's worst nightmare because I like to see a lot of people. I'm open and willing in a way, like I have an idea for the character, but I'm also willing to sort of rewrite a little bit for people if I find people I'm interested in. And in the casting process, I guess I made I learned things about what works and doesn't work for the story and for the characters. So it's helpful for me to see people. I think I'm always learning. I think because the character is sort of delicately written on the page, I think we got a lot of young women who auditioned who I didn't believe could take the journey. They didn't have an inner kind of strength, or a story inside them. So those were sort of two things that were like interior that I was looking for, an inner strength, and a story that would kind of bleed out onto the screen. It's a very kind of random sort of wacky story, but I met Sydney when she was 13 or 14 while I was producing a film where my partner's from in Buffalo. And she was just hanging out with a bunch of kids that we were shooting the movie with. And she didn't really even meet us, but somehow because we were like looking for people to put in the film, we added her on Facebook. And we're trying to keep track of all the kids who were around to potentially be in this other movie. And Sydney is an aspiring musician, and she would post a lot of videos of herself playing music. And I thought that her videos, had that thing that I was looking for. I kept referencing her while we were casting. I was like, oh, it's kind of like this girl, like Sydney in Buffalo, but I doubt she would do this movie, and then at a certain point in the casting process, when we were getting closer and closer and closer to our start date, I was like, we just have to bring this girl, Sydney, down from Buffalo. And everybody thought I was nuts, truly, truly crazy. And then, Talia came in through a more traditional avenue and, is an aspiring actress and, had been in like the first big round of auditions. And when we started looking for the cousin, character of Skylar, we just went back through everyone and picked 5 that we thought would bring a lot of, I guess, somebody who, would bring levity and youthfulness and be compatible but different. And, that was sort of everything that Talia encompassed.
I think there's, this movie works so well for so many reasons. One of the main ones is you guys' performance, Cindy and Talia. How did you, you really seem like sisters or cousins or best friends in this movie. Like, I really believed that all the way through. How do you create a relationship like that? And how did Eliza help you create a relationship that looks so close?
Yeah, I mean, we, I felt like I really connected with Talia from the first moment that I met her at the audition, and we got to talking and realized we were both from Buffalo, and, that helped create, a nice initial connection. Being from the same place really helps. And then, we did these like kind of bonding activities at rehearsal. We had about 2 days rehearsal. Eliza would have us like run through some of the scenes while doing like each other's makeup, things like that, just kind of spending intimate time together. And we also, I don't know, just like from the time, because I don't know, I guess since I had never acted before, I didn't exactly go into it thinking like, all right, I have to create a bond with this girl. I just kind of like met her and was like, oh, we're going to be working together every day, and she seems really cool, and I'm excited. And like, I just kind of wanted to get to know her just because I wanted to get to know her. And we just like clicked really well. And I just guess that real friendship that we actually developed offset, showed.
Yeah, I mean, Eliza really emphasized Sydney and I getting to know each other and building a personal bond rather than like making a backstory for our characters. And I think that really helped us for shooting.
Skylar seems like she's the doer. She's the, I don't want to say like the instigator, but she seems like the one who wordlessly decides what they're going to do, and then that's what they do when she steals the money. But I really loved, was there an intentional minimal quality to this? I just loved that you cut everything down. You felt like you cut everything down to only what was needed, which meant there was no conversation between them ever about what they were going to do. They just did it. And it sort of made me feel like this comes from being a woman in this society, and every woman having to think about, what if it comes to this for me, and who's going to help me? Were you thinking of, oh, these girls would have already thought about this?
I guess I took a big risk in not having this like overt communication about planning and about what was happening, and having Sydney character come out of the doctor's offices and explain everything that happened in the scene before. It just, it never, even when I experimented with it on the page, it just never felt effective. And I'm also not really interested in trying to capture the way young people speak. I'm just really interested in, I was more interested in how they support each other versus trying to get to that kind of realism, like a conversational realism. Which is why I think that the movie has like origins in neorealism, but also that, there are aspects of it that aren't really realistic, nor are aspiring to a certain kind of realism. And that kind of non-conversational realism is sort of one element. And I feel like I could get away with not having those kinds of expositional dialogues, because the subject matter is something that is inherently, taboo and stigmatized, that it's hard to talk about those things. And I do think that there is a thread through all my films about, characters navigating these stigmatized topics in their lives, and, with a certain level of inarticulateness.
So there's two scenes in particular where, Talia and Sydney, you have to convey an extreme amount of discomfort. For Sydney, it's the never, rarely, sometimes, always questionnaire at Planned Parenthood, and for Talia, it's having to spend time with that young gentleman so that they can get bus tickets. For Sydney, there's so much that you have to convey in that scene without words. Do you want to talk about like how you got through the questionnaire scene? Was that a particularly difficult challenge?
Yeah, I mean, discussing subject matter like that is heavy, especially for someone who was born a woman and grew up in a world that's scary like that. And there's things as a young woman that you go through and you see, and to discuss them in a scene that's it's not a real moment that I'm living, but the subject matter is very real, and it's very common, and it's everywhere, and it's just generally painful to think that it's a reality for so many people.
When she was asking you particular questions, even though you didn't have to give a specific answer, I felt like your expressions were so specific that I knew you had an answer. So when she said, "Is there something or someone dangerous in your house?" and you gave an answer to that, I was like, okay, I can see she's thinking of something specific. Was that a choice that you made to have a picture in your mind for everything that she asked, something specific?
I guess you can say that. I mean, I just want to say that I didn't approach this film like a traditional actor, because I never did that. I never went over my script and said, "Oh, here's these beats," or you know what I mean? What's my motivation here? I didn't do that. I went in and I dug from my own truth, and I did my best to apply it in that way.
Well, it's a beautiful performance.
Thank you.
Talia, yeah, those scenes with that kid. Oh my God, I just wanted to kill that kid. Talk about, because at times I wasn't really sure, like, are you hanging out, are you guys hanging out with this kid because you need the money, or do you kind of like the kid? And then there's the scene with Sydney and Tayo holding hands while she's making out with that kid at the pillar. Do you want to just talk about your process of working with those scenes, and the uncomfortableness of the situation was so palpable and so good.
Thank you. I just want to say that Theo's a great kid. He's not like his character at all. What I thought was really cool about the way that Eliza depicted that relationship was that it was kind of always on the line and never really defined which way it swung. But I mean, like Sydney said, as a young woman, you see a lot of it, and unfortunately experience parts of that too. So that kind of universal feeling of feeling small and uncomfortable, I was just able to think about and apply to those scenes that I did with him.
Eliza, do you want to talk a little bit about working with your DP, Hélène Bouvard, who has a rather remarkable resume in that she seems to shoot foreign films and American indies, which not a lot of people seem to do both. We were talking previously about, how this is, finding out you're pregnant and thinking about abortion. It places everything very much in your body, or it's about bodies. Do you want to talk about how you and Ellen worked out the look of the film?
Yeah. Helen, and I have worked together on 2 films now. So I think that there's a lot of benefit, to having a kind of repeat collaboration with a cinematographer, and a tremendous amount of trust, especially the second time. I think, that the things that I am interested in, she already knows, that it's going to be very intimate, that I punctuate certain behavioral moments with, close-ups, and that I'm pushing for, a subjective experience. And the shooting strategy is always very similar, where we're kind of close to the main character and a little more proximity-wise distant from the other characters. And there's like a general strategy to what I do. And, I couldn't like reapply what I did from Beach Rats to this film in terms of lighting, and because it was a really different story, and it doesn't take place on a dark beach at night. And there, it's not a summer film, it's a winter film. So there were shifts from project to project in palette, I would say, and in lighting. The other Beach Rats was very much about this tension between hyper masculine and homoerotic. And in this film, with the camera and the gaze, being really sensitive to not sexualize in any way. So those are some of like the shifts from project to project. But really, the process is us sitting down at a table and me unloading all of my ideas about, the world and the characters. And then we go through scene by scene and make a very general shot list. One of the biggest challenges, I have to say, of the movie was that there was way too many locations, because it's this kind of road movie. And it ate up a lot of the time in prep, because we were constantly seeing and losing locations, and seeing and losing locations, and seeing and losing locations. So normally we would take more time in a space, I think, but that was the biggest hurdle in the film was locations. But yeah, usually we sit at a table, and then we, go to the locations and walk through the story and just continue to develop a shot list. We don't really look at the shot list when we're on set. It's kind of the ideas and everything are inside us, and we edit and revise as we go. For this film, one thing that's kind of interesting is Helen built a rig that we used. And it's something that maybe kind of exists more in Europe, but it doesn't exist in the United States. But we used her special rig throughout a lot of the film, and the camera's kind of suspended like on a bungee, and it gives her a little bit of mobility to do things. And so it has like a handheld feel, but you rarely feel the presence of the operator. You never feel her body stepping to the side, clump, 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 clump. It has like kind of a lightness, and it breathes, and, she can move, up and down, and do a lot of movement that you couldn't do handheld, actually. And it allowed us to kind of cover things quickly in a space, in a different way.
That's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have about 10 minutes. I'm gonna take some questions from the audience. The first one says, question for all three. I just watched this movie today. I absolutely adored it. From your point of view, how have women and men responded to this movie since its release? What kind of comments have you received from people who've seen the movie?
I mean, there's such a range of comments. It's hard for me to say. Obviously, I don't know, over the last week, I noticed there's a lot of of the kind of more Christian faith-based press coming out about the movie. And so I've been sort of reading and sort of seeing their take. I think men are a little some men are a little perplexed about the representation of men in the movie, and that can be kind of like a stumbling block for them. And I don't know, but mostly, you try and focus on the positive, and the film has been really embraced, I think, as an American indie film. But I think the excitement of Berlin was that it was really celebrated as a piece of important cinema.
Have the comments from men been that they felt demonized by the depiction of the men that are in the movie?
Those are, I don't know, there's a range of comments. Like I saw one online that was really funny about, I wish I could pull it up, but I'm never going to be able to find it, about Jasper. I meant to send it to you, Talia, where it said something like, 10 years ago, this character would have been like the coolest kid in the movie, or something, that like, yeah. And it's like this, right. We're at a moment of reevaluating guys like this. Like, this is the moment, this is the moment of reckoning. Unfortunately, he's not charming. But I thought that was kind of interesting. And I don't know whether they meant it in a hostile way, in a critical way, or whether they could see, that, yeah, maybe if this guy was in a mumblecore movie, like he would have been like the cool kid, but now we're revisiting this type of behavior and seeing it for what it is.
Let's see. Talia and Sydney, did you want to share any comments, any feedback you've heard from men or women regarding the film?
I've pretty much only gotten warm reception, like good, just a lot of support. And also from men, a lot of, like some Instagram messages from some men saying like, oh, it's such a beautiful film, and like, I really feel for women, and it's nice to see that.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of nice Instagram DMs from all kinds of people. I like seeing messages from other teen girls though.
I think one of the challenge, or one of the things that makes me sad that we are not out doing more regional promotion is that it was really nice to be in theaters and have people come up to us afterwards, even for that brief moment, and tell us, what the film meant and share their personal stories. And I think it is a movie where people feel after they've seen it that they need to come forward and tell you about a similar experience that they had. It's giving people an opportunity to talk about, their connection to the story.
Yeah, this is for sure that kind of movie. And I was going to ask you if you were, if because of coronavirus stopping theatrical right now, if you were missing being able to do live Q&As, if you were missing having a connection, feeling a connection with your audience.
Yeah, I am. I feel that. But at the same time, given everything that's happening in the world, I still feel it's important to do this and to continue to try and connect, and to connect through cinema.
Yeah. Somebody liked your answer to the DP question so much that they want to know what the rig is called. Does it have
I
any?
don't. No, I don't know. She made it. I don't know what it's called or the version of it that exists in Europe because I've never seen it. But it's something she built
Is
herself.
Helene, is she on social media? Maybe somebody can reach out to her on social and see if she'll.
Yeah, I mean, no, she's not on social media. I can shoot her an email, but it's definitely something that's used or versions of it that are used more in Europe. And I've never seen anything like it here. I mean, it's a little bit like in really big Hollywood movies, they have like in studios when they do like action stuff, they have like a giant bungee cord hanging from a ceiling and the camera, and someone can move the DP around. It's like a very small version, a very small kind of handmade version of something like that.
I'm sure whoever asked that, you have good detective skills. I know you can find out what it is. Question for Eliza. I loved your choice in the screenplay not to reveal specific circumstances of Autumn's pregnancy, who the father is, how it happened, etc. Why did you make that choice?
Yeah, it's a question that comes up a lot, and I feel, there's no justice in this world really for women who come forward and talk about, there it feels like in a way that I introduce in the beginning all of these mysterious kind of characters who could be the father, and then it feels like the film is building to revealing that, and I never reveal it, and that was a choice. There wasn't like a version of the pivotal scene where she says who it was. She never names him. And that was an important choice because I just don't think that women have any confidence in justice and what will happen.
Here's a question about the 4 months, 3 weeks, 2 days Christian Munjo film. Eliza, you've spoken about Munjo's film. I'm curious if the three of you situated the film within the spectrum of other films about abortion, as in what to do, what not to do. The question they're asking is about 4 months, 3 weeks, 2 days, which won an award at the Cannes Film Festival. It's a Romanian film.
Yeah, that was the one that I was thinking about the most, because it's this like, masterfully suspenseful narrative about trying to get an illegal abortion in the 80s. And I was just thinking about like, why we make movies about the past to reflect on the future, and what are the challenges of making movies that feel like really that good, but also completely relevant to what's happening now. And for me, it feels like, oh wait, there's a movie in how hard it actually is in contemporary America to get a legal abortion. And why haven't I seen that movie? So that was sort of my just internal thought process. And obviously that movie's made by a man, and many movies are made by men, and, reclaiming that story in a way. I didn't look at a lot of other movies. It's hard sometimes for me to watch too much when I'm trying to find my own way and my own path through a script. But I think that, largely a lot of films deal with the morality of the decision to get an abortion and the moral complexity of that decision. And that was something that I just wasn't really interested in at all.
Last question from me. One of my favorite films of the past year was Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which I feel like there's a lot of similarities between yours and yours.
I saw it much after. I just saw it actually like a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I didn't, it's funny. It's so elegantly made. People almost don't talk about the abortion in the film.
Yeah. it's crazy that it was easier to get an abortion in 1700s France than it is in like 2020 Pennsylvania. But I found that there was a lot. The movie was saying a lot of similar things about sorority, about being able to rely on other women in these situations as a historical thing.
Yeah.
And also just the minimal quality of her filmmaking as compared to her film. Similar to yours, it felt like there wasn't an unneeded or extra moment in it. It was very economical and very like to the point, which I loved. So anyway, we have to go, but I want to thank you three so much. It's such a beautiful film. So right now it's only available to buy, but is it going to be available for rent and also on a streaming service sometime this year?
I don't know.
Or you can't say.
No, I don't know the plan. I don't know the plan. I thought it was just available to rent.
Yeah, you get it for like 48 hours.
Yeah.
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 But it's still like $20.
Oh, I thought it was a situation where you could buy it, but you couldn't do like a $5 rental.
Yeah.
Um,
Thanks for all your nice questions, everybody. I keep scrolling through them.
Oh, you can see them too?
I can see them. Sorry. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for chiming in.
Thank you so much for joining us. I know you guys are doing a lot of promo for this, so thank you for squeezing us in. And I hope to talk to you again on your next film because I love your films.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us.
All right. Take care.